quiero empezar diciendo que yo no hablo francés. Okay,
Yeah.
porque el título de este panel es de unas palabras francesas y la voy a pronunciar mal. I don't speak French, so bear with me here. Lieu, de Mémoire, ni idea. Okay, the sites of memory, okay? Thank you. Whew. Recalling and responding, ancestral memory, and living history. So te voy a leer la descripción del panel y después voy a introducir los panelistas. I'll read the description and then I'll introduce the panelists. This panel is going to be in English and in Spanish, so I'm excited about that. Sites of memory of the Black diaspora are all over, from the Caribbean Cultural Center, African Diaspora Institute in Harlem, to Puerto Rican Organization for the Performing Arts, PROPA, in Orlando, Florida. These places have been created to honor our histories. How do natural sites of memory compete with curated ones? How have these sites and their meanings changed over time with input from new historians and archivists? How are these spaces disrupted by gentrification and the commodification of these histories? For example, the weddings at the haciendas in Puerto Rico. How do these Black cultural organizations work together in East Harlem and beyond to help define our history and shape the present and future of Black diasporic communities? To engage in some of these themes and to discuss some of these questions, we have three incredible panelists that I'm really honored to be in conversation with today. The first one, Melody Capote, was appointed the executive director of the Caribbean Cultural Center African Diaspora Institute in 2018. She began her tenure with the organization in 1984.
Which is the year that she was born.
Hey, I whispered that to you. I whispered. Okay, I'm about to be 41, baby. Okay, anyway. She is a vocal advocate for cultural equity, racial and social justice for African descendant communities. Prior to becoming the executive director, Melody was responsible for development and government and external affairs and was instrumental in the successful implementation of the capital campaign that secured the funding for the beautiful state-of-the-art landmark facility in the heart of El Barrio that is the new home of CCCADI, which opened in 2016. Her leadership in challenging the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and the continued systemic racism and police violence resulted in the development of important initiatives, such as the organization's successful pivot to digital programs designed for all ages, and the All Digital Professional Development Fellowship for Artists economically impacted by COVID-19. She also created the Arts Go Black, a campaign demanding actionable change to be instituted by arts and cultural institutions and the philanthropic community that fund these entities. Under her leadership, CCCADI became deeply immersed in educating audiences about the spiritual, physical interconnectivity between the African descendant community and the forebears in Africa. They create programs such as Sankofa Young Women's Leadership Program. They also established the first citywide entrepreneurial assistance center for artists of color. They also established a professional and artistic development for cultural workers and creatives. The Crossroads program, designed to work, train, and fund artists and cultural workers based in the Caribbean Basin. And she is also the co-chair of the newly formed East 125th Street BID, a founding member of the Cultural Equity Coalition and the LXNY Art Steering Committee, and serves on the East Harlem Cultural District Task Force. Someone said period, exactly, period, point blank. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Melanie Maldonado Diaz. She is an educator with doctoral training in performance studies and is the founder and president of PROPA, the Puerto Rican Organization for the Performing Arts. She started genealogy work in 1997 as a quest to find her Afro-ancestra Catalina. Yours too, huh? That's right. Oh my God. She also helped me find my ancestor Catalina, which is amazing, yeah. Since then, Melanie has connected people to founding families of San Mateo de Cangrejos, the progenitors of family surnames in Puerto Rico, and to ancestors born in Africa. In 2019, she began visibilizing Black history sites across Puerto Rico by dedicating historic placards, 9 so far. Most recently, she's working to connect living people to the 100 ships that arrived in Puerto Rico directly from Africa during the transatlantic trade of enslaved people. In 2021, she hosted and curated the Africa Habla en Mí genealogy series. In 2023, Melanie was invited to represent Afro-Boricua genealogy at the inaugural Descendant Communities Social Innovation Lab, co-convened by the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Since 2023, she serves as the Puerto Rican contact for, or the PR contact or Puerto Rican contact? PR contact? Puerto Rico, okay, I wasn't sure it was public relations or Puerto Rico, okay. The Puerto Rican contact for the Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Makers project. And in 2024, she installed the first historic placard related to this organization in the Caribbean. She's also a Bomba researcher, and her work led to the first inclusion, a 2024 inclusion of PROPA in the African American Civil Rights Network, the first organization to represent Puerto Rico there. She has served as a Boricua slang editor for Hey Yo Soy and Obatalas Bugalú, contributed to series about Broma en Plena, to the Grove Dictionary of American Music, and is published through Cambridge Scholars Press, the CENTRO Journal, Routledge, the Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña, and she is the PI and consultant and genealogist of Caravali LLC. And I'll say she's an incredible genealogist. So much to thank her for. And last and certainly not least, este está en inglés, yo pensé que lo iba a leer en español. Okay, está bien. Last but not least, Jose Manuel Cepeda Martinez. Born December 12th, in 1974. Lo voy a decir porque está aquí, en Puerto Rico. Okay. Jose is the son of El Tambor Mayor, Jesus Cepeda Brenes, and Sonia Martinez. He is the grandson of the patriarch of Bomba en Plena de Puerto Rico, better known as El Roble Mayor, Don Rafael Cepeda Atiles. And, no, that's not the only parent, okay? Doña Caridad Brenes de Cepeda. Okay. Jose was born into the esteemed Cepeda family, an Afro-Puerto Rican family of artisans, musicians, dancers, singers, and composers who have been passing down the bomba tradition in their family and in the community for many uninterrupted generations. Jose Manuel Cepeda began learning and practicing bomba shortly after birth and made his public debut in 1983, dancing and singing coro with his family at the Condado Hotel in Puerto Rico. Jose, along with his family, appeared in the documentary El Patriarca, the Patriarch, which told the story and meaning of Puerto Rican folklore culture. Jose taught bomba workshops on the island of St. Thomas to children of Puerto Rican and Dominican descent as part of the Body Language Festival in St. Thomas in 1989. His family also participated in conferences and workshops and leadership classes in New York, at Hostos, at Lehman College, and he also traveled with Afro-Cuba to Matanzas to the Dos Alas tour, where he and his father, sisters, and uncles taught over 25 cities, and also in the US. In 1998, he and his family taught dance classes and collaborating participations publicly with artists such as Paul Simon, Ricky Martin, Robbie Draco, Wilkins, Manny Manuel, among others. Since 2016, Jose was an instructor, an artist in resident at Bombale Cepeda Family Summer Performance and Cultural Exchange Project, La Bomba es Vida, presented by Galería de la Raza, SF, and the Brava Theater in San Francisco, California. He is a dedicated practitioner, student, lifelong advocate of Puerto Rican culture and his family's legacy in the bomba tradition. Currently, he is part of and leading the Villa Palmeras Historical Society, where he serves as a research historian and a steward of this rich history of San Mateo de Cangrejos. Please join me in welcoming this incredible panel. Although the bios that are very extensive, I wanted to read every single word of them because I think it's important for us to know that our community members that we're in the presence of do such critical and important work, and that the work of preserving our community, our culture, our arts, our performance is not just relegated to people that have degrees and PhDs and who work in the Ivory Tower or in research centers, right? And so what I want to do is to give the next few minutes over to each one of the presenters in this order. To talk about 5 minutes each about their work in the community, and then we have a dialogue, a conversation that we want to have with some questions, but also start preparing your own questions from the audience because the microphone is up and ready to take those questions. So we'll begin here. Melody.
Buenos dias, good morning, or good afternoon. I want to take a minute and ask you all to take a deep breath because, wow, she's amazing. It is a mouthful. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for our ancestors. So I don't know how you opened today's event, but I typically always honor Egun, or ancestors first. So let's just take a minute, take a deep breath. Think about those loved ones, those who paved the way for us. Because what we know from our history and what we're seeing in government today is erasure. We're not supposed to be here, y'all, and yet we are. And so they did it before us. We're in it right now, and we need to make certain that none of this work was in vain. right? Remember the assignment. Remember the assignment. And so, yes, I'm Melody Capote, Executive Director of the Caribbean Cultural Center, African Diaspora Institute. Folks call us CADI, CCADI, the center. I'm used to the center. We were created as a research, the start of the center was that we were created as a research and resource center. Very few people know that. Started in 1976, our founder, Marta Moreno Vega, is also my titi, my aunt. And so I grew up in this. I grew up in this. By her side was my ancestor, my mom, Laura Moreno Gago, with whom I learned an awful lot about my Puerto Rican culture. Mommy was born and raised as a Black Puerto Rican in Aguadilla. The center was and still is a nexus or a platform for exchange of information and expertise that celebrates Black genius, period. Right? It was never intended to be a museum. We do not have a collection. We don't store our stuff in basements and in storage units where folks don't have access to it. Next year, 2026, marks our 50th anniversary. That's 50 years. And the idea is that right now, for the last 2 years, and as we prepare for 2026, it's uncovering the archives, 50 years of photos, videos. Some of y'all are too young to know about videos and Betamax and slides, but all this is what we're uncovering, right? And what we're finding, especially working with archivists, are coming in and saying, who kept these meticulous files? And it was my mom. And every time they pull something out in her beautiful penmanship, I know where it was, who it was, when it happened. And so what we are attempting to do as we approach the 50th and plan for beyond the 50th is to continue to be this space, this portal that activates living archives. Each of you hold living archives in your homes. Your photographs, the storytelling, right? Sitting by your grandmama or your grandpapa, right? And understand, and if you didn't do it or you haven't done it, you need to do it. But we are these living institutions as individuals. The center happens to be a space that allows for folks to come together and have the opportunity to exchange and, most importantly, inform the programs that we do. So we don't decide to do a program and pull it out of the air. Just about everything that the center has done in its history has been informed by the constituencies that we serve. Using the BLM model, when we were in the pandemics of both COVID-19 and BLM, we knew we needed to do something. And so, between a series of workshops that we offered for artists of color, and let me say, while we're hearing at the federal level the language they don't want us to use, we're hearing it from philanthropy already. Say artists, not artists of color. Say justice, not racial justice, right? We're hearing it already. And so there's a mandate on us as an institution, as this institution, to respond in a way that is responsible, because we will be erased. And so the presence of the Caribbean Cultural Center on 125th Street between Lexington and Park, among 11 developers in El Barrio, count them, 11, says that we are here and here to stay. We don't want to see a plaque that says Puerto Ricans and African Americans used to be here. And so the institution continues to be the reminder, the depository, the gathering space for us to come together as brain trusts. We're not art for art's sake. We're art of resilience. We're art of resistance. And that is why the center was created. It's a space to bring us together to, we have a good time, but we need to strategize and we need to organize to assure that we're not erased from the narrative. This is the beat of our ancestors, the beat that connects our global African diaspora. As Executive Director of the Caribbean Cultural Center African Diaspora Institute, my job is to ensure that beat stays strong. Using art and culture, our mission is to achieve racial and social justice and cultural equity for African descendants everywhere. As systemic racism persists, we work to strengthen our community through in-person and virtual performances, exhibitions, discussions, and more, connecting over 20,000 people globally to the traditions that bind us as African diaspora people. After the murder of George Floyd, we created the Institute for Racial and Social Justice in Arts and Culture to boldly teach arts and culture organizations about the consequences of systemic racism, because we know art heals. We are artist-centered because we know that without artists, there are no arts institutions. Historically, we at CCCADI have provided a platform for artists that includes presentations, technical assistance, and paid fellowships. We are also youth-focused, supporting thousands of young people of color through arts education initiatives such as our Sankofa Young Women's Leadership Program, which trains young women as activists, artists, and community culture bearers. Who we are and what we do is guided by the resilient beat of our ancestors' hearts. I am Melody Capote, and I am the proud leader of this extended family.
Thank you, Yomaira, for the invitation and seeing us and acknowledging us as contributors to this work. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with my friends and colleagues. I want to tell you a little bit about PROPA's work. PROPA is, for 20 years, served as a pseudonym for my work. And then just a couple years ago, I incorporated PROPA as a nonprofit organization because I realized that it needed to continue growing. My baby needed to continue growing and needed the resources to do so. So PROPA is now a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2003 and has been operating as a nonprofit. And I want to tell you a little bit about our work. Particularly, we have 3 areas of work. One is the Bomba Research Conference, which this year celebrates its 20th anniversary.
Nice.
Manuela Arciniegas Lasay is here in the audience, and she was an original committee member for the first 2 conferences in 2005 and 2007. In 2011, I moved the conference from Chicago, which is where I'm from as a Chi Rican, and moved it from a space where in a colder climate it makes sense, but when we moved it to Puerto Rico, we moved it to the places and the spaces where that history took place. So marquesinas, street corners, plazas, patios, cemeteries, all of these spaces where Black history was lived. So Bomba Research Conference, through that work, through the conference, then kind of organically was birthed this other program called Lugares Históricos, and that was to highlight these spaces. And so there was an emphasis that began developing organically around these spaces. And then the third program is the Areito series, which celebrates our Taino heritage. And through this lens of PROPA, we're really focusing on an Afro-Indigenous lens. So through the Lugares Históricos program, there are 5 projects at the moment. So we're going to go through them each. Thank you. The first project is Bomba Sites. And again, being born out of the Bomba Research Conference, it was the natural beginning for us. So here what you see above, and we were at the Schomburg Center. I'm going to make a connection to something said at the Schomburg yesterday. But these are 2 pictures of the same site. And this is the former ruins of La Hacienda Henrietta in Arroyo, which today that name evolved and became known as oh my gosh, my mind is blanking because I'm so particular about saying Henrietta. It'll come to me. But this plantation was owned by Eduardo Lind, who introduced the last name Lind to Puerto Rico. Have you ever heard of an artist by the last name? Can one come to mind? A couple, right? The
Somebody
cousin,
whose work is downstairs in the gallery.
Daniel and Samuel Lind, two famous Puerto Rican artists from Loíza with roots in Arroyo. But at Schaumburg, we heard yesterday that there was an artist who donated something very early on in their collection. I don't know if the archivist is still here, but there was a Puerto Rican artist almost 100 years ago that donated some art, if I'm remembering that correctly. Eduardo Lin was the husband of Susan Walker Morse, daughter of Samuel Morse of the Telegraph. And so this land is important because of how it ties us to the United States and that current colonial relationship. But it's also the ancestral home of the mother, or the ancestral home of one of Puerto Rico's most important drummers from the 1900s, and that was Pablo Lin. So when I got to learn about Pablo Lin and started doing his research, and we ended up here, you can see one of the panel sessions up there at 2013 conference. And then after Hurricane Maria in 2019, when I take one of Pablo Lin's descendants back to the site so that she wanted a brick from those ruins. And you can see, because of Hurricane Maria, the land was not upkept and we couldn't find it. But I went back several times. And I have a brick for her that she doesn't know about. And everybody else is coming, I promise. So, bomba sites, ship arrival sites. You heard about this pedestal beautifully designed and created by internationally renowned artist Diogenes Ballester. On this pedestal, we put the first placard in the Caribbean associated with the Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Markers Project. Here, what I want you to see is that one of the prerequisites of that program is that the placard be facing the ship arrival site. So we're right there in La Playa de Ponce in southern Puerto Rico. And one of the other requirements is that you have an interfaith ceremony. So what we did is that and Manuela participated in the one we did in Humacao in 2023. Melody and Diogenes and Jose participated in Humacao too, but Diogenes, Melody, and Jose participated in Ponce. Here I wanted to create a Paseo de Bomba. And the traditional way to teach the Paseo de Bomba, and the traditional way that it was enacted in a bate, is to go counterclockwise. And we know this, and it creates a certain vibration. And so the idea was that we were going to go around 8 times in honor of those 8 ancestors who came aboard the Marie in 1818, who left the island nation of Sao Tome y Príncipe that was mentioned multiple times last night as being an archival site, who left on that ship and arrived in Ponce in May of 1818. And here we went around, we did a giant paseo around this placard 8 times to create a vibration and let those ancestors know that we were honoring them. Another project in the Lugares Históricos program is a site of resistance. And here we are honoring and celebrating the spaces and places where rebellions were planned, but according to colonial history, Spanish colonial history never materialized, but we're working to tell these stories of resistance. Temporal is another project that literally just launched a couple weeks ago. It is about telling the stories of erasure because of climate change in historic Black communities, particularly tied to Bomba. So here I am at the ruins of La Virginia, which is a former plantation that only existed for 5 years, 1875 to 1880, in what we now know as the island of Piñones. But all the way in the end, right on the banks of the Rio Grande de Loíza, people that lived on that land continued to live there until 1960. They were displaced by Hurricane Dana. So we're doing work with these sites of memory. Cemeteries. This is another area of programming where we are looking to honor ancestors. Here, this is actually a protest when the burial site of Bomba dancer from the early 1900s was destroyed to resell the tomb and make it available to another family. And there is her grandson on the side, and some of our practitioners, Marian, and some of her colleagues and students. So cemeteries is another area. I want to shift now, because that's a grant that we received through CENTRO, thank you, to continue doing the cemetery work. We are looking to identify and visibilize the sites where Africans were buried. Here you can see Melody. This is an altar that we put up in Ponce. It's the infinity symbol, but it's the number 8 because of those 8 captives aboard that ship. And in the rings, you can see pinned there are descendants, Afrodescendientes from Ponce, who have changed the world, and we were honoring those ancestors. Here is also from our Ponce ceremony. You can see that one of those prerequisites with the Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Markers Project is that we include elders and children. So in both the Humacao and Ponce sites, we had children release the flowers into the ocean to honor those ancestors who were lost at sea. In Ponce, we included elders in that moment. Here's that same veneration in Humacao. We go directly into cemeteries, and I tell genealogies there. I connect those ancestors with living descendants. And so during the 2021 Bombay Research Conference, you can see there, that's my pal, my buddy, Don Hiram Maristan. And he's there. I get emotional saying it, but he's there with us. And one of Mayagüez's most important voices, Maria Cristina Alfonso Mangual, had recently passed away. And in collaboration with her grandson, who ended up being sick and not able to join us that day, but he was on the telephone, I shared her genealogy, which their family claims a very direct connection to Cuba and Tumba Francesa and this beautiful relationship between Bomba and Tumba Francesa. And I was able to show how that connection started about 5 generations before Cristi. And so here we are doing that ancestor veneration. This is the last one, and I'm gonna ask you, we're gonna join in, okay? This was part of our ancestor veneration in Humacao, where we actually said the names, the African names of some of those captives that were brought illegally through violence and force from the area of the Congo River, from what at that time was the Kingdom of El Congo, to, they were on their way to Cuba and they got shipwrecked right outside of Humacao. Unfortunately, this clip only captures the names that they were given, that were forced upon them at the time of their burial. And you'll hear that we repeat one name over and over again, and it's because 27 of 79 people that were interred within 3 weeks of that ship arriving were given the same name. As I read it, or after I read it, these are some of the names that were registered on that ship, not necessarily the 79 that were interred within the first 3 weeks of that shipwreck. But after I read each name, if we could collectively just do one snap, okay? Ganga, Bemba, Singa, Mata, Jenga, Mongo, Sumbu, Pinda, Kansa, Peso, Gonga, Tantu, Lungana, Kabongo, Salongo, Dombe, Goma, Pasina, Dinfanga, Goma, Pindi, Loamba, Matumona, Mafuta, Mongo, Sambo.
Buenos días a todos, yo soy José Cepeda de la familia Cepeda. Llevo 8 generaciones en mi familia conservando nuestro folclore negro en Puerto Rico, conservando la bomba, la plena. Tuve la suerte de haber nacido en esta familia y tuve la suerte de tener un abuelo como Rafael Cepeda, que durante toda su vida se dedicaba, aparte yo era su nieto y a sus hijos, siempre estarnos contando las historias de nuestra comunidad negra, de tener el orgullo de ser negro y sobre todo cangrejero. Una tierra cangrejera, una tierra de negros libertos. Mi abuelo nos enseñaba a lo que era un baquiné, lo que era un Belén, las fiestas de bomba, las fiestas de cruz, a las prácticas negras del espiritismo, las prácticas congas, las prácticas que tenía nuestra comunidad desde tiempos inmemorables. Mi abuelo nos dejó a nosotros un legado grande, pero un legado grande para Puerto Rico también, para nuestras comunidades negras. Mi abuelo escribió alrededor de 100 libretas durante su vida, contando en estas libretas las historias de estas comunidades negras que están siendo invisibilizadas y son invisibilizadas en Puerto Rico. Nosotros seguimos peleando por San Mateo de Cangrejo. Nos pusieron el nombre de Santurce, el nombre del opresor, de quien le quitó las tierras a los negros, el conde Ubarri de San José de Santurce, y hoy Cangrejo se llama Santurce. Pero nosotros resistimos y seguimos peleando y seguimos dando la pelea. Ahí, pues mi familia siempre nos enseñó a eso, a resistir. Mi abuelo, sobre todo, a través de la bomba, iba escribiendo todas estas memorias. Y esta es la importancia de conocer la historia de nosotros, porque la vamos a defender mientras... Abuelo decía, tú no amas lo que desconoces. Conoce tu historia para que la ames. Pues estamos resistiendo a través de las memorias. Ellos no pudieron hablar, nosotros sí. Y donde quiera que yo me pare, voy a defender mi raza negra y voy a defender nuestras tradiciones como familia, porque eso fue lo que mi abuelo nos enseñó. Mi papá, yo digo que papi es un monumento viviente, porque papi vivió esta época donde los expropiaron a ellos, la gentrificación, lo que seguimos peleando actualmente en la isla de Cangrejo, que hoy yo le digo a mucha gente, Cangrejo es una isla, y me dicen, no, Cangrejo es una isla, sí, quítale los 7 puentes que tienen y vas a ver que es una isla. Entonces, nosotros somos de esa isla cangrejera, y me siento orgulloso porque cuando veo ahí a Arturo Chombel, pues mira, Arturo Chombel es cangrejero, no de San Juan, cangrejero. Veo a Silvia del Villar, cangrejera. Y esa conciencia que se cree en Cangrejo de defender quién eres tú, hacia dónde tú vas, y tener este orgullo negro, patrio, porque los negros, los esclavizados, una vez los trajeron, ellos no podían irse, ellos se quedaban. Ellos empezaron a sentir ese amor de decir que eran puertorriqueños porque estaban en esta tierra, que la tenían que defender, y la defendieron de los holandeses, la de los franceses, y la gran batalla que tuvimos en Cangrejo en el 1797, la batalla contra los ingleses. Aquí, pues les presento un poquito de lo que estamos haciendo. Soy presidente de la Sociedad Histórica de Villa Palmera, y es el movimiento que nosotros estamos creando. También soy parte de la Fundación Rafael Cepeda, guardando la memorabilia de mi abuelo, que mi padre Jesús Cepeda es el presidente, y papi ha ido conservando las libretas, la música y todo lo que hemos estado consiguiendo de abuelo. A través de la Sociedad Histórica también hemos encontrado muchos documentos tanto de la trata esclavista y de la invisibilización de la comunidad negra en Puerto Rico en distintos pueblos. Aquí les presento un mapa del 1775. Este mapa muestra donde se hizo el primer poblado cangrejero. Este primer poblado fue, los que conocen, en lo que es ahora el Machuchá, en la calle Loíza. En esa área ahí se creó el primer poblado, y ahí lo estamos documentando, y ahí estaba la Ciégana, estaba el Machuchal, que es el nombre por el cual se conoce esta comunidad, y nosotros pues nos hemos dado la tarea de estar en estas investigaciones. Aquí les presento Pedro Cortijo, una pintura de Campeche. Pedro Cortijo, el capitán de las milicias, fue quien le escribe al rey de España para solicitar que se haga Cangrejo municipio. ¿Qué pasa? Nosotros con la Sociedad Histórica tuvimos una reunión con la Iglesia Católica, y la Iglesia Católica nos dijo a nosotros que el municipio de Cangrejo no se hizo antes por no tener una iglesia, porque lo que tenían era una ermita desde el 1719. Entonces la iglesia dijo, hasta que no tengan la iglesia, pues no pueden ser municipios. El 2 de noviembre del 1773 se hace la iglesia de San Mateo de Cangrejo, y el 20 de noviembre le dan los permisos para que Pedro Cortijo de los Santos sea el primer alcalde que tiene la comunidad, y es el primer poblado negro fundado por los negros libertos. Y eso es lo que lo hace importante. Por eso es que lo quisieron invisibilizar. Y constantemente nos borran la historia, porque hoy en día cuando tú vas al famoso Santurce, lo que ves es Bayola, ves los edificios, ves todas las construcciones que se han hecho y borran completamente la historia del negro. Por eso ayer cuando la compañera en la Cumbre Afro en Puerto Rico de Cabo Rojo decía, voy para Loíza para que sepan que había negros en Cabo Rojo, pues qué pena, porque había negros en todo Puerto Rico. Y nosotros los cangrejeros somos negros, y hay negros en Bayamón, y hay negros en Carolina, sobre todo Carolina, bien importante.
Y en Vega Baja.
Seguro, voy por ahí, vamos por ahí. Lo que pasa es que tengo poquito tiempo, pero hay una historia en la batalla del 797, cómo los negros libertos de distintos pueblos llegaron a Cangrejo a defender a Cangrejo, porque ellos necesitaban defender su barrio, su comunidad, su pueblo. Cangrejo, hoy en día, como lo llaman Santurce, pues está dividido entre San Juan, Carolina, Loíza y Río Piedra, que luego pasó a ser parte de San Juan también. Mira si Cangrejo era grande, que lo dividieron en 5 municipios. Ese es el sello de la alcaldía de San Mateo de Cangrejo, parte de la historia que hemos recopilado. Historia cangrejera, esta foto representa esa identidad de la comunidad que tenía, esa comunidad propia cangrejera que luchó, que mantuvo sus raíces negras en contra de las luchas que tuvieron ellos, que vamos a seguir hablando más adelante, conservaron sus tradiciones. Familia, los apellidos más originales de nuestra familia estén los Allende, los Andrinos, los Andrade, los Ayala, los Cortijos, Cepeda, del Carmen, Falú, los París, Verdejo, Vizcarrondo, Soriano. Esta familia de los Santos, es bien importante que sepan algo, que esta familia de los Santos, con el tiempo, como al igual que la familia del Carmen, fueron quitando el de los Santos y hoy son la familia Santos. Así como Mayra Santos, ahí son la familia Santos. Los Febres también fueron parte de esta familia. Y estas son las familias, los apellidos originales que todavía los vamos a estar escuchando en nuestra comunidad. Mi padrino Lester Nel Allende, lo tengo que mencionar, muy importante. Rafael Cortijo, Ismael Rivera, y por ahí un montón de artistas más que vamos a ir escuchando. Cuando hablo de la bomba cangrejera, pues aquí está mi abuelo Rafael Cepeda, mi tía Petra Cepeda, que en paz descanse, y al lado de allá está el patriarca del barrio de Bayola, Eustacio Flores. Don Eustacio Flores organizaba los bailes de bomba en lo que hoy es el Bayola, pero era cuando era la comunidad negra, se organizaban porque Cangrejo tenía 4 patriarcas de la bomba. Uno era Eustacio Flores en Bayola, teníamos José Inés Andino en el Machuchal, Ignacio Gil Williams, que era quien organizaba las fiestas de bomba de todos los que venían de San Tomás, Santa Cruz, Barbados, porque Cangrejo, su base, fue también hecha sobre todos los cimarrones que se escapaban de las islas con la misma célula de gracia del 1664, donde les dicen que les van a dar la libertad una vez juren la bandera y sean católicos y iban a tener libertad, pues los envían a Cangrejo y ellos fueron parte de esta formación. Todavía en Cangrejo tenemos apellidos como Johnson, Warrington, todos esos apellidos los tenemos todavía en la comunidad de nosotros, se me olvidan, los Walker, Thompson, Latimer, siguen, eran holandeses, los mismos Clemente, todos esos apellidos siguen todavía en nuestra comunidad. Y eso es parte de la resistencia que ha tenido la comunidad. Y otra cosa, muchos de los que venían de las islas, hemos encontrado en su bautizo, en la iglesia, que se ponían los apellidos de los cangrejeros. Para quitarse el apellido de las islas, eran Cortijo, eran Andrade, eran Cepeda, Falú, Febre, y habían cambiado el apellido. Un apellido en Puerto Rico que yo en las investigaciones descubrí que venía de las islas Isaac. El apellido Isaac, bien famoso en Carolina, especialmente en Sabana Bajo, que hay muchos Isaac. Ahí fue que descubrí que no, él venía de San Tomás y fue parte de esto. La bomba cangrejera, esa bomba de libertad, esa bomba que mi abuelo, nos las ha traído a nosotros por generación. Yo soy parte de la 6ª generación, somos 8, yo soy la número 6. Es una de las cosas que nosotros hemos estado defendiendo por centenario. Pero miren qué interesante, cuando empezamos nuestra investigación, descubrimos que, pueden ver ahí en el 1906, están viendo que están habiendo una prohibición de la bomba. Esta es una de las tantas prohibiciones que hemos encontrado desde a principios del siglo, casi hasta el 1940, en Cangrejo, prohibiéndole la bomba a los negros, que era su tierra, eran libres, y ahora le están diciendo no pueden tocar bomba, no pueden prender velas, e incluso cuando los mudan a residencial Luis Llorén Torres, las Margaritas, parte de toda esa familia que salen de la parada 21, de la famosa parada 21 de Bayola, del Machuchal, los van mudando y los ponen en Llorén, y cuando ellos llegan a Llorén en los años 50 le dicen no pueden prender velas, no pueden hacer fiesta de cruz, no pueden tocar bomba, no pueden tocar plena. Le están borrando la tradición, le están sacando toda la libertad que tenía esta comunidad. Sigue habiendo una opresión. Y encontramos estas ordenanzas y dentro de estas ordenanzas tenemos otras donde se los llevaron presos a ellos por estar bailando bomba. Eso es lo que lleva que en los años 40 al 50 muchas familias no siguieran pasando la tradición, para que sus hijos y sus nietos no sufrieran ese momento que se estaba viviendo. Por eso es que cuando veo la figura de mi abuelo me sigo orgulleciendo, porque encuentro un reportaje en el 1954 en el Mundo y 1958 donde abuelo está diciendo estoy peleando para que la bomba no desaparezca. Y entonces tú dices, pero, ¿sabes? Don Rafa, había muchas familias, pero había muchas familias que todavía hoy, frente a casa de mi abuelo, hay una familia descendiente de la familia París y de Facundo Martínez, bailadores de bomba. Y sus nietos, hoy en día yo he ido a la casa de ellos y les digo, vengan, denos entrevistas, sean parte de la comunidad. Y ellos me dicen, no, nosotros no queremos problemas, nosotros no nos queremos meter en problemas, nosotros no queremos que nos persigan. Gente que tiene 70 y 80 años, tienen miedo todavía en el 2025 de no hablar de lo importante que hicieron sus abuelos, que fueron parte de esta tradición. Facundo Martínez venía de Mayagüez, Fausta era de Cangrejo, Fausta París. Y estas ordenanzas fueron fuertes. Y aquí, pues estamos viendo el San Mateo de Cangrejo antes de y lo que es ahora Santurce. Como ya ahí lo estamos viendo cómo está corriendo y actualmente seguimos peleando porque aparte que tenemos la Sociedad Histórica, tenemos el Comité Intersectorial, la Fundación Rafael Cepeda y estamos peleando porque nos quieren seguir sacando de lo que nos queda, de lo que es Villa Palmera, de lo que es la calle Loíza. Seguimos levantando la voz en contra de esta gentrificación. Antes el condado, ahora el condado llega hasta donde está Santa Teresita, toda calle Loíza, ahora es parte de condado. Y esa batalla que sigue teniendo nuestras comunidades, pues la Sociedad Histórica pelea por eso, aparte de buscar la historia, estamos peleando por estos movimientos que están pasando en nuestra comunidad. Aquí tienen todo lo que era el antiguo San Mateo de Cangrejo, desde la laguna de San Antonio, completo, todo Miramar, hasta lo que Carolina es la Blasina. Todo eso, el aeropuerto de Isla Grande, el aeropuerto, ahora mismo al aeropuerto donde casi todos llegan, los que han ido a la isla, ¿verdad? Eso es parte de Cangrejo, Isla Verde. Todas esas tierras fueron arrebatadas de la comunidad cangrejera. Muchos de ellos en el cimarronaje corrieron a las montañas de Carolina, donde es el barrio Cacao, donde es Barraza. Ahí familias como los Febres se corrieron allá arriba y están ahí en Cacao y están resistiendo. Esas familias resisten y están ahí y siguen adueñándose de ese cimarronaje. Y eso es parte de la investigación que nosotros estamos haciendo. Y es importante que salga desde nosotros, con todo, ¿verdad? Con las ayudas de todos los profesores que tenemos, porque es importante que la comunidad conozca la historia. La historia tenemos que reinscribirla, y en especial la historia negra. Las tradiciones cangrejeras aquí, la bomba, esa foto es del 1960 de mi familia. Por allí está mi papá bien jovencito, mis tíos. Estas son las caras de las familias de la bomba, porque yo también quiero que aparte de los Cepedas conozcan otras familias cangrejeras. Por allí tenemos a la hermana de Ponchinela, han oído hablar, los que han oído un poco de la bomba han hablado de la ponchinela y es uno de los trabajos de Melanie, que Melanie ha sido mi compañera en este crimen, en toda la genealogía cangrejera. La ponchinela, una de sus hermanas, bailadoras de bomba, pues la tenemos por allí. Los que siguen la bomba oyen hablar mucho de Conrada, hay una bomba que dice Conrada no tenga amores, pues mira, esa es Conrada. Aquí tenemos a Susana Verdejo, también bailadora de bomba. Estas son las caras, Ramón Cepeda, estas son las caras de las familias bomberas, de las familias que es importante que la gente la conozca, las familias que han hecho resistencia, no solo nosotros, ellos también, los Verdejos, los Ayala, todos los Calderón, son parte bien importante de estas investigaciones y la familia. Hay familias como la de Conrada que me dijeron, pues mira, que hay una foto de ella y ahí está Conrada. Poder ver estas caras de esta familia. Mi abuelo, Rafael Cepeda, el gestor de nuestra familia y gracias a él pues estamos aquí y gracias a sus escritos, gracias a sus libretas, estamos aquí, seguimos resistiendo. Miren alguna de estas libretas. En estas libretas está el famoso bombón de Elena. Elena toma bombón, toma bombón, Elena. Pues está escrito en esas libretas y muchas de las bombas que se tocaron no solamente en Cangrejo, en Ponce, en Mayagüez, porque aparte de que abuelo escribía sus bombas, también recopiló las bombas de otros bomberos para que no se perdieran, porque a través de esas bombas se contaba la historia, se hacían los cuentos, las vivencias que tenían. Ahí la familia Costoso, otra familia cangrejera, me cuenta que su abuelo le decía que su bisabuelo iba a las bombas para escuchar qué era lo que estaba pasando, para ellos saber cómo ellos se iban a organizar para hacer frentes de batalla constantes. Estoy yo con mi hermana, mi papá, mi familia. Aquí pues estamos viendo otra parte de la plena. Vemos al sonero mayor principalmente, Ismael Rivera, con su pandero. Abuelo Rafael también con su pandero, pero también aquí está Chin, el de Toquío. Otro plenero de la barriada Toquío, que también fue otra de las barriadas que desaparecieron. Y eso es lo que nosotros queremos. Como decía abuelo, por donde entramos unos vamos a seguir entrando todos. Y abuelo decía, que hace falta que un negro entre para que vea cómo todo el mundo va a entrar. Y es lo que estamos haciendo. Estaba abuelo, estaba Maelo, Rafael Cortijo, pero por ahí mismo estaban todas las familias cangrejeras llegando y haciendo historia en la comunidad. Ahí está Rafael Cortijo y Mael Rivera. Bien importante porque cuando la bomba empieza a tener su decadencia, en los años 40, 50, surge este combo de Ismael Rivera y Cortijo, con el bombón de Elena, que mi abuelo hace la composición, y explotan, y llevan la bomba y la plena a conocerse, porque en aquel momento eso no se conocía. Y cuando le decían a los negros en aquel tiempo que tenían que entrar por la cocina, pues mira, los negros estaban rompiendo con esa parte de la historia. Y fue bien importante, porque este grupo se forma y las primeras bombas que ellos hacen en su grabación son las bombas que se tocaban en casa de Eustacio Flores, las orquestaron. Y todos los compositores que habían en ese primer disco eran de Cangrejo. El primer disco, el primer número que es del palo es el Bombón de Elena, pero al reverso de ese disco estaba Saoco, escrito por ¿quién? Por Pellín Rodríguez, que era también de allí de la comunidad de Cangrejo. Y eso es parte de esta historia que la tenemos que seguir llevando para que no la invisibilicen. Ahí pues, ahí pueden ver la canción del Bombón de Elena, con la composición de abuelo. Parte de estas fiestas de cruz, esta es mi fiesta de cruz, yo soy también, tengo promesa de fiestas de cruz, llevo 20 años haciéndola, pero ¿por qué cuando yo le hablo a la gente de la fiesta de cruz de Cangrejo siempre la separo de las demás? Porque siempre le dan su toque religioso. En Cangrejo, las fiestas de cruz eran dedicadas a los ancestros. Y detrás de esas escaleras y de la cruz, nuestra comunidad escondía su religiosidad, su espiritualidad. Y cuando se monta el altar de la fiesta de cruz, siempre se evoca a todos estos ancestros que hicieron fiestas de cruz. Y se van poniendo sus cuadros y se va preparando nuestra religiosidad. No la que presenta el cristianismo, no, la que presenta la comunidad negra. Y eso ha sido parte de lo que nosotros hemos hecho en San Mateo de Cangrejo de conservarla, y estamos trabajando con el Departamento de Educación, estamos haciendo muchos proyectos para que se puedan llevar a los estudiantes de la comunidad, especialmente cangrejera, que conozcan su historia, conozcan por dónde pasó, y nosotros seguir trabajando porque tenemos que seguir sembrando la semilla. Estas son las madrinas de las fiestas de Cruz. Aquí los padrinos de las fiestas de Cruz también fueron bomberas, como ustedes pueden ver. Le ponemos cara a la comunidad cangrejera, a esa comunidad negra que se desconoce. Pues míralos, aquí están. La familia Álvarez, una familia bien conocida. Allí está don Felipe Febre. Don Felipe Febre, él fue mi inventor en las fiestas de Cruz. E incluso en la bomba, yo iba con Melanie, llegué ahí con Melanie la entrevistó. Inocencia, Carmen, Chewi, toda esta gente lucharon, toda esta gente dio su sangre, dejó su sudor en Cangrejo. Por eso nosotros tenemos que defender estas caras, nosotros tenemos que defenderlas. Como les dije, nosotros somos las voces de ellos y tenemos que seguir luchando. Porque nuestra comunidad tenemos que seguir sembrando a la juventud. Tenemos que demostrar que Cangrejo vive. Cangrejo no está en un museo. Cangrejo vive y seguimos aquí. Ahí tenemos el Belén que se le hizo a mi abuelo el año después de la muerte de él. Un Belén que lo continuamos celebrando en la comunidad cangrejera. El Belén para Rafael Cepeda. Aquí tiene la sociedad histórica. Aquí tenemos a los que han sido la base fuerte de esto. Aquí tenemos a Gilberto Aponte, que escribió un libro sobre cangrejo. La doctora Ada Verdejo. Yo, mi papá Jesús Cepeda, Lester Nurse y el antropólogo Jaime Pérez, porque esto es parte de lo que la sociedad histórica está haciendo. El antropólogo Jaime Pérez ha hecho unas investigaciones en el cementerio y ha creado este vínculo desde el cementerio a la comunidad. Ya no vemos el cementerio como este lugar desolado, de llorar, de tristeza, no. Lo estamos viendo como lo que nos conecta, nuestras raíces. Vamos y tocamos plena, vamos y tocamos bomba, vamos y llamamos a nuestra gente porque son parte de este movimiento. Y sí, tenemos muchos catedráticos de la Universidad de Puerto Rico que se han envuelto en la comunidad cangrejera, pero es que ellos son descendientes de cangrejeros, ellos son cangrejeros y ellos están utilizando sus estudios para ayudar a la comunidad y que esta historia no muera. Casualmente en estos días se sacó un libro sobre San Mateo de Cangrejo. Esto ha sido parte de los proyectos que nosotros hemos estado haciendo, la divulgación y investigaciones preservando la historia de Cangrejo, con la Universidad de Puerto Rico, el Departamento de Arquitectura, el Departamento de Planificación. Arriba tenemos la investigación que se hizo en la iglesia con la parte de los curas, estas vinculaciones en la comunidad, que es bien importante. Y el eje central, el cementerio, volvemos ahí. Jaime Pérez, estamos haciendo recorrido todos los meses, hablando de las tumbas que no podemos dejar de olvidar. Rafael Cortijo, Celedonio Delgado, que fue un gran educador negro en Puerto Rico, que es un proyecto y el Departamento de Instrucción en aquel momento se lo denegó. Pero su familia nos hizo llegar esos documentos, los tenemos. Tenemos los documentos ahora mismo de Carmen Vélez Richardson, nuestra actriz negra. Todo eso está llegando a través de la sociedad negra, de la sociedad histórica de Villa Palmera, y nosotros lo estamos teniendo como parte de estas memorias de nuestra comunidad que no queremos que se pierdan. Y por eso estamos luchando, por eso estamos aquí, dando el frente, y les doy las gracias por escucharnos. Mayra, gracias. Yomara, gracias. Y le doy las gracias a Centro. Me siento orgulloso, quiero que sepan que me siento orgulloso de haber nacido donde nació Arturo Chomber, donde nació Silvia del Villar y donde están los cangrejeros resistiendo. Gracias.
Hay preguntas aquí de la audiencia, hay preguntas. Sí, pues aquí está el micrófono. Vente, ven.
It's up to us as a people to defend what's ours. How can we as individuals support you? Because you've been doing this work with almost no funding. How can we as people donate, support your projects? Where do we go and how do we do that? Thank you for your beautiful work.
Thank you for that. It is just that. Uno tiene que donar, apoyar el trabajo de nuestras instituciones. Nadie lo va a hacer si no lo hacemos nosotros. We have to invest. And this isn't about donations, it's about investing. It's about, everybody thinks that the donation has to be big. $10 or $20 a month over a year says something. And I think the commitment has to come from us as individuals. If our institutions die, what do our children have? We've taken so many strides and made so many efforts to establish organizations, institutions, programs. I was in college when they were first starting a Puerto Rican Studies department at Lehman College. It didn't even exist. Black Studies department. And they're so ready to wipe those out. We've been under attack now for years. And now again, under this administration. And so our institutions can easily be wiped away. We do get public funding. And I don't say that government isn't responsible. Those are our tax dollars. That's taxation without representation if they don't give us the funding we deserve. They don't give us what we need, but they have to make that investment in us as well. But philanthropy, where the wealth was made on the backs of enslavement, that's reparations. But we can't demand that. What I can do is demand of you to give to our organizations and the work that we're all doing. Because if we don't do it, if it's for us, by us, that's what FUBU is, right? So it really is the responsibility of each of us, your money, your time, your attendance at events, because without our being able to show that we deserve to be here, we have to show that you care. We have major white institutions that are now dabbling in our programming because they can get the funding to do that. They're trying to replicate what we do. They don't do it. You have to be grounded in community to do this work. You can't copycat it, right? Or cookie cutter it. So I think, to Manuela's question, I think it really is about finding ways of how you support us. We give it church. We're real ready to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on labeled sneakers and carrying the labels of Michael Kors and others on our chests. And we don't invest in our own organizations. We don't buy the books by our authors. We don't attend cultural events. We'd rather go to a major concert where you're spending lots of money. I mean, that's cool too, but not instead of, right? So I think, for an organization that's celebrating 50 years that still doesn't have a significant individual donor base, it doesn't speak to us, it speaks to y'all, because we're still doing the work. But our organizations are under attack, folks, and if we don't stand up for them, we're going to disappear. We will be erased.
Bueno, ahora mismo la Sociedad Histórica, pues tenemos las páginas de nosotros, la Sociedad Histórica, a través de las redes, que es como lo estamos trabajando, y también la Fundación Rafael Cepeda, que es como lo estamos trabajando a través de las redes de nosotros, y así pues nos pueden hacer las donaciones que nos puedan hacer. Lo que es importante, el trabajo que se está haciendo, y cuando se crea conciencia, para mí es importante esta conciencia que se esté creando para uno aportar, para uno darla de corazón, porque todo esto uno lo que hace es manteniendo viva nuestra historia, lo que nos identifica a nosotros como pueblo. Mi abuelo decía, cuando Puerto Rico comprende el valor de su folclore, luchará con mucha fuerza para defender su honor. Pues tenemos que comprenderlo. Gracias.
I know that there's a lot of Puerto Ricans that are constantly going to Puerto Rico. There is a recorrido por el cementerio de Villa Palmera, and they charge. So please bring your students. Bring your students to Puerto Rico instead of going to, qué sé yo, El Morro y todas esas pendejas, perdón. Todas esas otras maneras de conocer la isla. Actividades.
Pendejadas.
Please bring them to do tours, historical tours, to la Sociedad Histórica, el cementerio. Every time that we have a foundation, my cómplice, mi pareja de vida y cómplice, esta cosa bella que yo, con la que me casé. We bring people, and the first thing that when we get students, we bring them to la playa de Ponce, to the Casa de la Cultura de Ponce de Diógenes. I mean, I love this idea of creating tours that can teach the other history. So there's many ways, además de los 20 pesitos.
Hola, me llamo Ari, vengo del Brooklyn College. Soy un organizador del sindicato de Brooklyn College, so estamos creyendo eso ahorita. Y una de las cosas que sigo escuchando es que cómo puedo organizar, how can I organize myself? And I'm sorry, I wrote this down. I'm like super nervous, guys.
No, no,
Go
no.
ahead.
Tranqui.
You're in family.
No pasa
Something I hear, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Something I hear is I want to get organized. And it's like, but these people don't know how to. And so something I want to ask you guys as community leaders, como gente fuerte en sus comunidades, what can I do to support them? And how can I bridge that gap to build community?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
If I could respond.
I'm going to take the other question as well, same
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Elijah. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm here with my cousin. She lives here in 118. Why is for us so difficult to accept this as part of Puerto Rican culture and not something seasonal or folkloric? Like most of people think, oh, this is just something like,
Yes.
seasonal. No. This is part of our identity. This is part of our history. Esta es nuestra historia. Y en la escuela no te lo enseñan. It's not being taught in school at all. Just sugarcoat it. And this is important because we gotta bridge the gap. Tenemos que incluir a las generaciones de ahora, que es lo que pueden rescatar esto. Como Cepeda dijo, la juventud es importante, es esencial.
Exactamente.
Entonces, ese desconocimiento que está ahora mismo intermedio. Ahora mismo yo conozco amistades de mi edad que no saben lo que ustedes están hablando. Que ellos le pueden enseñar a sus hijos porque en la escuela no lo enseñan. It's really difficult. We gotta bridge this gap. Thank you, guys.
Answer him first. And then
Yeah. I think my response is gonna kind of blanket, and that for me is always centered in seeking out the elders and sitting with them. People will contact me all the time and say, "Oh, I want to learn bomba. Where can I go learn bomba?" And I'm like, "Hold on. Do you want to learn about bomba? Or do you want to take a class?" Because two different things for me in terms of my approach. My approach is about the tradition, and the tradition is a transmission of knowledge. And how is that done? Through relationship. And so the relationship happens when you sit down with somebody and you hear 45 minutes of life and then maybe 30 seconds of bomba. But it's context, it's connection, and this is how we bridge that gap, is that we say elders are important. They're not to be disregarded. They're not to be ignored. They're to be included. They're to be invited. They're to be elevated. They're to be made to feel important, not just included, but important. And I think that's how organizing starts there, is going back, is taking a seat and saying, I don't know everything. I'm excited. I have a lot of energy. Maybe I have access to resources or I know people who do. But guess what? Let's go ask how to do this. Let's go support existing programs. And I think, some of these institutions, some of these projects, I'm part of La Sociedad Histórica de Villa Palmera. We don't charge for these recorridos for the most part. We ask for donations, though.
That's us too.
So it's like, oh, I got this $20. I was going to go eat lunch after this. But guess what? People are donating their time to provide these recorridos, donating their time to organize these conferences, to organize these events, and showing up does everything. In a world where we're operating with social media, sharing is huge, is so helpful, because you have a network that I don't have access to. And sharing that, making those connections, elevating, telling a story, making a connection about how these institutions are important to the work that you want to be a part of. And saying, this is an example of what I would like to do. This is an example. Let's go support. Let's get on that Zoom. You know how many of us do Zooms all the time? and we don't have enough people listening in or engaging, or we often have the same people, which is great. We love our experts in these subject areas, but we need everybody, and there's so many ways to gain access and to contribute. I'll tell you just as a simple, something small. These recorridos, showing up with a case of water. Do you know that that's something accessible? Stopping at the pharmacy, at the supermarket, and spending $5 on a case of water, and contributing that, saying, I'm here, but I'm here to contribute, not just take. but I'm here to contribute. There's so many ways that are, and Melody gave an example of how $10, $20 a month, it might seem like, well, I'm really, like on a fixed income. And yet we have money for, $7 coffee. There are ways that if we're really committed to community, that there are ways that we can make it happen.
I say to you, young man, there are so many models of how we organize and how we strategize. You don't need to do this alone. You shouldn't be doing it alone. And there are models out there, organizations you can connect with, where you can begin to do this work and connect with other people and bring it back, because that's the important, right? How do you bring it back to your friends, your circle, your network, your school, right? So I strongly suggest that looking at history, looking at the civil rights movement, the organization that I direct is not just a Puerto Rican organization, it is about the African diaspora. So we are looking at the common thread we share as people of African descent, right? There are examples in all of these communities, there are examples throughout history that show us how to do this work. And it's a time for us right now, as we start to think about how does one respond, because I don't think we want to react, but we want to respond to what is happening in government at this moment. And we certainly can't be working from a place of fear, right? So taking that action, asking that question even, speaks volumes. As for your question around how do we continue to pass this on to our young people, that's why our institutions exist. We're doing in and after school programming with our young people. They're seeing themselves in the faces of the instructors who are in front of them. We're teaching a language that still, we talk about being minorities. We're not minorities in this country, but we still use minority. We use even the divisiveness of saying, well, I'm from here in the diaspora and I'm from there in the diaspora. We're all from the same freaking diaspora. So if we look at the common thread we share, we look at how we're grounded in African traditions, and people use culture and art interchangeably. It's culture, folks. Art is part of culture. Language is part of culture. Spirituality is part of culture. Food. Look at the plátano. Fufu in Africa is mofongo in Puerto Rico, is mango in the Dominican Republic. Same food, different spoon. And so it is important to get that notion. And the other thing is, for many of us, we may be white presenting or you're black presenting, but if you understand your history, the question of ¿y tu abuela dónde está? I have a niece who's blonde, blue-eyed, blonde hair. Her grandmama is black. So she's African. And she understands the privilege of the color of her skin. It's how she shows up. It's what she says and how you use that privilege. And so it's connecting yourself to and you may go to a place and say like, this doesn't feel right. If it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. Gut is spirit, and spirit's gonna tell you when you're in the right place. And I think it is our responsibility to our young people to assure that institutions and work that's being done, again, these are living archives. This isn't about going to a library. It's about going to the recogido. It's about dancing bomba. It's about exploring and studying and understanding where you come from. It's the notion of Sankofa, which is why we created the Sankofa Young Women's Leadership Program. The Sankofa is a bird that looks back. And the notion is you can only go forward if you look back. You've got to know where you came from. So use being in college, wonderful. Use being asking the questions and seeing what's been done already, because you do not need to recreate the wheel.
Yeah. And I was volunteering and supporting.
Absolutely.
You could be a volunteer at CENTRO. I'm sure you could also be a volunteer at CCCADI. And I'm thinking about the importance of Black feminist organizing and the tools they give us. These consciousness raising groups, reading together, inviting elders to come and talk to. Listen, I have a question. How did you guys do it? This feels really impossible. Those become really important things. And the last thing I wanted to add to this is I have my niece is half Greek. And when she was growing up, her mother ensured that she went to Greek school every weekend. She learned Greek. She went to Greek Orthodox Church. She looks like a, big curly Puerto Rican girl in the Greek school, right? I know friends who grew up that were Chinese. They went to Chinese school. The Jewish kids who went to Jewish school, right? And that's not something that we necessarily have in Puerto Rico, but we do have lots of different activities. I know for a fact that Proyecto Coco Ballet in Puerto Rico does free classes every Saturday in El Viejo San Juan. They got lent a space to do work there. There's also La Goico that has events on Sundays. And there's so many ways that we could bring and integrate our children into community and these organizations. Lo que pasa es que toma mucho esfuerzo. You have to seek it out and do it, but it becomes the important part of how we replicate this. And I also know that both here, CENTRO is working on K through 12 curriculum on Puerto Rican studies, but Isargo Adrio in Puerto Rico is working with the Department of Education to bringing history of enslaved and free Blacks into the schools. And we were just talking about how to make that curriculum go when we were in Cumbre this year. And so there's people working on the ground right now trying to develop programming, language schools, education, and cultural groups really directed at youth. The youth is the most important thing. The elders preserve memory. The youth are the ones that are going to pick it up. And us that are in the middle are the ones who have to continue to make those connections.
Sí.
Yeah.
No, just one thing, compañero. When I was doing el Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños at UPR against everything, o sea, en contra de todo.
PR Afro.
PR Afro, centropr.hunter.cuny.edu. We have una página. One of the things that we did was an Afro lab. It was all done by young people. And we decided that we were going to be constantly doing content. But, these are people that are 18 years old, 22 years old. And what we did is that we made it. We didn't stop and ask, how do we do it? Well, we're saying, how do we do it? Doing it. Entonces, voluntariado, to be involved with some of these organizations is really important because then you will have the knowledge while you're learning. O sea, no te lo preguntes más. Porque la única manera de saber cómo tú te organizas es organizándote. Y la única manera en que lo puedes aprender, the only way that you can do it, is picking an organization and learning from within. Tú sabes. Si esperas la clase o si haces un comité, en Puerto Rico siempre decimos, if you want something to not get done, organize a committee. No se va a hacer. Vamos a estar hablando hasta Kingdom Come y no vamos a hacer las cosas. And sometimes we trust too much our heads, nuestra mente, no nuestra conciencia. Consciousness and thinking are two different things. And sometimes we overestimate the possibility of not knowledge, but thinking. Y la cabeza es la loca de la casa. So sometimes you have to stop, go to the place, look at an elder, or go to lo que dice Cepeda. O sea, yo fui a casa de José y me dije, ¿qué te ayudo? Yo no sé cómo se digitaliza, ni sé cómo vamos a hacer, cómo vamos a ayudar. Pero fuimos y vamos a ayudar y ellos nos van a decir qué es lo que hay que hacer. If it is sweeping, sweeping. Si es trayendo agua, agua. Si es cogiendo las libretas y ponerlas en un container, vete, compramos un container. ¿Dónde están los chavos? No tengo los chavos. Ok, espérate, vengo ahora. Déjame ir a donde sea a buscar esos chavos. Now I know fundraising. You have to be learning it through doing it. Y eso es bien importante porque no va a haber una clase, no va a haber un mentorship, no va a haber un TikTok tutorial. No, eso no lo va a haber hasta que tú no lo estés haciendo. And that's really important. ¿No? Yo lo aprendí en un sitio que se llama ACON. It's called la Asociación del Norte del Valle del Cauca. What they do is that they organize themselves transgenerationally. There is an elder, and then that is 60, and then 2 people that are 40, and then 2 people that are 20. And wherever they go, if it is to fight with el presidente de donde sea, the 3 generations go. So you learn organically. And I think that that is one of the things that we have to start doing. Programs are good, institutions are good, talleres are good, but we have to learn organically. Que ya en tu vida tú tengas ese conocimiento integrado. Because then, nobody will stop you. Se va a la institución porque te quitan los chavos para pagar la luz y el agua, but the institution lives in you.
In you, exactly.
Así que eso no podemos dejarlo pasar. We have to rethink how we learn and how we organize. Because if we organize, como se están organizando desde la izquierda, desde la derecha, Eurocentrically, if we do not decolonize the way that we think about organization, we're lost. Vamos a estar hablando toda la vida de qué es lo que tenemos que hacer. Y eso es una pérdida de vida.
Y de tiempo, yes. Pues mira, do you have another word to add? Because you guys puedes tener la última palabra si quieres. Sí, dale.
I want to just go back to the earlier comment right before the panel about how to take this knowledge to the home. And one of the things that I started working on with the Cepeda family over a decade ago and many other families in terms of genealogy is creating a home archive. And that starts with all of your family papers. When people come to me and they ask me, I want to get started in genealogy, the first thing I tell them is find the elders in your family and interview them. Ask them the same questions over and over and over again, because every time you ask them the same question, a new detail is going to come out. Mi abuelo, tú con la misma pregunta siempre. Guess what? Every time I learn something new about that same story. Ask questions, write it down, record them telling you those stories. Ask them for their papers. You don't need to take the original papers. Take a photocopy. Take a photo.
With your phone.
iPhones can create PDFs right now just from a quick picture. There's a way to create an archive at home. There's a family I work with in Guayama. Because of this work, because we traced the original ancestor that was born in Africa, they have begun using their annual holiday gathering to document, to reinforce. When the family members arrive, there's a sign-in book, and the children have to identify what generation they're from that ancestor. I'm from the 6th generation. I'm from the 7th generation. And they're able to tell you from whom that ancestor is, from whom they descend. So there's so many things that you can do without money to preserve family history, to bring these methods into the home and document not only what you already have, but the knowledge that we have, this ancestral memory we have in our muscles, in our bodies, in our consciousness, in our spirits is there. You are a walking archive.
That's how we started.
And so you share it, you talk it out, you write it down, you get it documented. And that is the way to begin. And then you start connecting with other people, other organizations, and you excavate that knowledge from the family then, and you help deposit it into a place where the community can access it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Quiero añadir that there's a beautiful thread here from, the first panel and, the theme of this conference, which is, recordar resistir and the sites of Black memory, our ancestors, our archives, our arts, and how Schomburg's idea of us digging up our past in direct response to someone saying that you don't have a past, you don't have a history, becomes such a radical act. So even preserving your own family history is the first step towards a radical act of reimagining and defining ourselves, right? And our communities against those very limited scripts that have been imposed upon us. I also want to say that there was something that came up en cuando tú enseñaste la foto de Barrio Tokio. Abajo en la galería del centro, uno de los entrevistas de Frank Espada fue en Barrio Tokio y hay several mujeres, you mean? Hay mujeres, fotógrafos de mujeres en esa exposición abajo de Barrio Tokio, jóvenes y mayores, which is really beautiful. So downstairs he mentioned Barrio Tokio, which is a barrio that was completely eradicated. But in the gallery downstairs, one of the photos of Frank Espada shows these young young girl and also an older woman holding a baby from Barrio Toquillo. He was able to go and capture some of those interviews before that barrio was erased. And then the final thing I will say is that we are gonna head down to lunch because we're gonna have a beautiful conversation, some food. I know we hungry, but a conversation with Ballester and Ballester downstairs. And Diogenes Ballester had the idea that right, like towards the end of that conversation, he wants to take you just walking to the images of Jose, and then upstairs here, right around the corner, the beautiful installation that Diogenes made. So we're gonna be having some lunch. So let's head on to the first floor towards the gallery in the back. Let's get some food and then listen to the conversation of these two incredible artists. Thank you.